9 months into the Dominate tour, Seungmin woke up in a Seattle hotel room, pointed a camera at his face, and delivered a confession that should send a chill down anyone's spine. He had just slept for 17 to 18 hours straight. As he stared into the lens, dead serious, he didn't call it a good rest. He called it exactly what it was, saying flatly, "That's not resting. That's the body shutting down. That isn't just being tired. That is a biological system crash. The kind of shutdown that happens when a machine has been redlining for far too long." And here is the terrifying part. This wasn't a rookie group crumbling under pressure. This was Stray Kids, arguably the biggest act in K-pop right now, in the middle of a tour that was shattering records left and right, while the world was busy cheering for their sold-out stadiums and celebrating the biggest tour in K-pop history. A much darker reality was playing out behind the scenes. This wasn't just a victory lap for a successful album. It was a nearly year-long endurance test that pushed 8 human beings to their absolute physical and mental breaking points. And frankly, the cost they paid to make it happen is something the headlines conveniently leave out. Before a single ticket was scanned for the Dominate tour, the groundwork for this exhaustion was already being laid. The group started intense preparation just a month or two before the kickoff, which might sound like enough time until you realize what they were actually trying to do. They weren't just reviewing old songs. They were completely overhauling their physical conditioning to survive the road. They were learning new skills, building new stamina, and adjusting choreographies for stages that were massive in scale. To give you an idea of the pressure cooker they were in, Stray Kids learned the full, complex choreography for Mountains in a single day. Felix himself admitted that was incredibly fast, even for them. That kind of speed doesn't come from confidence, it comes from necessity. It comes from a high-pressure environment where there is zero margin for error. They only had 1 week of stage rehearsals before the first show. 1 week. Think about that. For a production this size, with moving parts, live bands, and intricate staging, having 7 days to figure it out on the actual floor is madness. It leaves no room for mistakes, which means the stress levels must have been through the roof before they even set foot in Seoul. The truly scary part is that the preparation didn't end once the tour started. In a normal world, you rehearse, you perform, you rest. But on the Dominate tour, the work never stopped. Almost every single stop required a full rehearsal the day before the concert. We aren't talking about a lazy run-through where they mark the choreography. They performed the entire set, often without costumes, just to adjust to the acoustics and the layout of a new arena. Then, on the day of the show, there's the sound check, which is practically a warm-up event for the fans. Even minutes before stepping on stage, they are stretching, warming up voices, going over steps one last time. It is a relentless cycle of travel, rehearse, perform, repeat. 57 shows across 5 continents, nearly 60 full performances in less than a year. You have to understand, when you see them on stage looking perfect, they are functioning on a grind that would break most people, and the cracks were starting to show in real time. The physical toll of this schedule isn't just being tired, it is cumulative damage. By the time they reached the Asia leg in Macau, Seungmin filmed inside the therapy room, showing off the medical equipment and explaining that the traveling physician was taking good care of them because performing is, in his words, very physically demanding. But let's be real about what a traveling physician does on a tour like this. They aren't there to cure injuries. They are there to patch the members up just enough so they can walk on stage again. It is damage control, not healthcare. In Bulacan, Seungmin walked into the therapy room to film Felix, who was getting a massage from the physical therapist. Felix has been struggling with back pain for years now. It's a chronic issue that flares up under stress. And while logic would suggest he needs to rest, to sit out a few shows to let it heal, that simply wasn't an option. When 40,000 people have paid to see all 8 members, and when the pressure of the biggest tour in history is on your shoulders, sitting out isn't a choice. So what does Felix do? In Rio de Janeiro, on an off day, he was running on the beach, playing games with locals, and sprinting into the ocean. In Lima, he did a 2-hour weight workout. In nearly every city, he was incredibly active. On camera, he didn't look limited. But you have to ask yourself, is that strength or is that adrenaline? Either Felix was performing through significant pain and hiding it remarkably well, or the treatment he was getting was just effective enough to keep him functional, but not enough to actually heal. Because healing requires rest, and rest was the one thing they didn't have. There were still over 30 shows left to go. The slow accumulation of strain from performing at peak intensity night after night creates a situation where you are barely holding your body together with hate and sheer willpower. And it wasn't just Felix. Vocal cords are muscles too, and they don't care about ticket sales. Singing for nearly 3 hours night after night, screaming high notes and spitting rapid dead-fire rap verses destroys your voice. Felix mentioned sipping honey water just to soothe the chords before going on stage. Members were working with vocal coaches to adjust techniques just to protect themselves from permanent damage. The audience doesn't see the hoarseness or the strain in the throat. They just hear the performance. But the members were pushing through pain that we could barely imagine, just to maintain the illusion that everything is fine. But the physical exhaustion was only half the story. The mental strain of this tour was arguably more shocking, because you could see them forgetting who they were and where they were. In Mexico City, Han started filming a vlog entry about his day. Mid-sentence, he just stopped. He looked at the camera and asked, "Why do I feel so sluggish?" And then the video just cuts off. It doesn't pick up until the next day. He literally couldn't function. By the time they hit Madrid, even sleeping became a problem. Likno woke up one morning and explained to his camera that he was just missing being home. This is 9 months in. They aren't adjusting to tour life anymore. They are enduring it. They were fighting to fall asleep, stressing about their lack of rest, which in turn makes it harder to sleep. It is a vicious cycle. Changbin had to resort to watching Netflix just to distract his brain enough to relax. They were trying to nap during the day, but that just messes up your night rhythm further. You could see in their eyes that the hotels were blurring together. The rooms, the airports, the venues, it all became one long gray corridor. The most haunting moment came from IN. Later in the tour, he filmed himself wrapped in a blanket talking about the day's concert, but his camera malfunctioned and didn't record the audio. When he tried to dub over it later, he stared at the footage of himself talking and admitted he had no idea what he was saying. He said, "Looking at the video now, I think I was sharing my thoughts on the show, but I can't really remember what I said." He guessed he probably said the concert was fun, but he genuinely didn't know. He couldn't recall his own thoughts from a few hours earlier. That is how fried his brain was. The shows had blurred together so much that he couldn't distinguish one day from the next. When you lose your short-term memory because you are so overworked, that isn't dedication. That is a health crisis. To cope with this chaos, the members developed some obsessive survival strategies that actually say a lot about their mental state. In Bangkok, Bang Chan filmed himself unpacking his suitcase. He wasn't just putting clothes in drawers. He was lining up his toiletries with surgical precision, folding and sorting everything with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable to watch. He laughed at himself and said, "This is why I sleep late. Don't live like me." He said it 3 times. But this wasn't just being neat. When your entire life is controlled by flight schedules, venue managers, and press obligations, organizing your hotel room becomes a desperate attempt to grasp for control. It's a way to create order in the chaos. Likno did the same thing with food. While other members tried local cuisines, Likno ate the exact same meal, tuna, seaweed, and rice, in city after city across continent. It got to the point where the group actually ran out of seaweed because he and the other members were relying on it so much. It wasn't a diet, it was a safety blanket. When everything else is falling apart and you are exhausted, you need something that is familiar and reliable. Changbin worked out every single day, no matter how tired he was. It wasn't for fitness, it was for sanity. It was the only thing he could control. And you have to wonder, was any of this worth it? The pressure of consistency is brutal in K-pop. The fans on night 2 of a concert expect the same energy as night 1. The fans in Brazil deserve the same show as the fans in Seoul. So you can't have an off night. You can't give 80% just because your back hurts or you haven't slept in 24 hours. You have to give 100% every single time. That level of mental focus, where you are performing at a peak level while your body is screaming at you to stop, is exhausting in a way that sleep doesn't fix. It drains your soul. And even when they did get breaks, the breaks weren't really breaks. They were exploring cities, working out, meeting fans, or in Bang Chan's case, meeting up with Racha to produce more music. They couldn't switch off. Even in San Francisco, instead of sightseeing, they were in a hotel room working on new songs. Making music is their passion, sure, but on a tour like this, even passion becomes another item on a to-do list. The tour eventually ended in Incheon, but the finale didn't bring the relief you might expect. When they stood on that stage looking at the crowd, the emotions were raw. Likno said, "A diamond is nothing without the light that shines through it. And if we're the diamond, then stay must be the light." It was a beautiful sentiment, but it felt heavy. Yeonjun's voice cracked as he thanked his vocal teacher for helping him bring his voice back, admitting that he had leaned on Seungmin when he was struggling. They were openly admitting how hard it was. They were acknowledging that they nearly broke themselves to make this tour happen. And the most ironic part? The work didn't stop. Within days of the final show, they were back in the studio. Less than a month later, they released Karma and started promoting again. The machine never stops. The Dominant tour was a massive success. It broke records. It made history. history. But if you look past the flashing lights and the sold-out stadiums, the cost was staggering. It lives in Seungmin's 18-hour comas. It lives in Felix's chronic back pain. It lives in IN's lost memories and Han's sluggish silences. It lives in Bangchen's obsessive organizing and Leekno's tuna packets. This is the scandal of the industry that no one talks about enough. We celebrate the product, the perfect music video, the sharp dance move, but we ignore the factory conditions required to produce it. Stray Kids dominated the world, but they did it by pushing their bodies and minds to a point that no human being should have to endure. And the scariest part, they would probably do it all again if you ask them. That isn't just professionalism. That is the tragic reality of life at the top of K-pop.